something a little different. I want to introduce somebody, Joe Alcock, talking about sunblock. Out here the sun is very strong, but not only do we get effects from the strong sun, we also get effects from the water. And don't think that you're safe by going in the water. I hope Joe will talk a little bit about that. But I'm using Ocean Potion. This is a SPF 30. Now what does that mean? Ultra light with Parsol 1789? I have no idea what this talks about. And then it talks about water and sweat resistance. I mean, what is that? And oh, it's got Solaplex Photostable UV filter. Well, there's a lot of great stuff in here, but Joe, I need your help to decide what sunblock I ought to be buying. Maybe I ought to buy some of that oily stuff. How much do I put on? Do I put it on after going swimming or something like that? I don't know, but I know you can get really carried away with this sort of stuff. So Joe, take it away.
This is waterproof. Does that have any meaning? What do you think? Is it really waterproof? Does it mean you can put it on and you can swim for a week and it's going to work? The way they test this is they put people in the water. I don't know if they're swimming or just standing around in the water. Then they go out and they dry for 20 minutes, and they go back in the water for 20 minutes, and they repeat these cycles. And they check to see how long it stays on, how long you get protection. But this term actually has meaning under the FDA, this term waterproof. There's water resistant, which means that it's good for 40 minutes. So that would be 20 minutes in the water, 20 minutes out, and then 20 minutes in the water again. It's the cumulative time in the water. That's what water resistant means. Very water resistant, which is the same as waterproof. Very water resistant means you can do 4 of those cycles in the water. 80 minutes in the water. This will stay on and retain this SPF of 45. So that's what that means. How about sweat proof? Does that have any special meaning, do you think? Sweat proof doesn't have any special meaning by itself. In terms of the FDA says if you can prove that you're water resistant or very water resistant, you can also put sweat resistant or sweat proof on your label. That's all it means. So by itself, it doesn't mean anything. And no one's doing sweat tests of these things. Okay, after that, it says rub proof. What do you think that means? So you would want to have something with some abrasion resistance, right? Turns out there's no FDA standard for abrasion. Yep. Okay, next thing, apply liberally. How much is enough? Who thinks we put enough of this stuff on our skin? But what they recommend in terms of, if you were to look at the little pharmacologic thing that would come with this perhaps, it's going to say they want you to put 2 milligrams per 2 square centimeters. Okay? And that's actually way more than we put on, typically. When they do the testing, that's how much they put on, a thick slathering of this stuff. So dermatologists recommend if you were to fill a shot glass full of this stuff, and then that's your dose for your body. Who thinks that you're out for half an hour, so you're going to get that many minutes? If I put on another layer, I'll get another, 45 times. Who thinks it has a cumulative effect?
I'm saying as a naive consumer.
Thank you.
I absolutely believe that the more I put on, the longer I can stay out.
Okay. All right. So if I burn in 10 minutes, and this gives me 450 minutes, if at minute 448 I put on another layer, I don't get another 450 minutes.
What Joe's asking is, can you, at 450 minutes or just before it, apply another SPF of 45 application and get an extra 450 minutes? The answer is no!
Okay, so sunscreens, they come in 2 basic flavors, all right? How do sunscreens work? What do you think they do?
Either block or allow the right wavelength so you get a tan.
The 2 flavors are, we mentioned metals, so they're metal oxides, zinc and titanium mostly. Those are thought of as physical sunblocks. They reflect and scatter light. Turns out some of the newer preparations, they put these in tiny little micronized formulations, microspheres, and it doesn't look white or yellow on your skin. These actually absorb some. So this physical aspect, you don't hear that term used quite so much. But for simplified sake, think of a physical sunblock as being one. The second flavor is things that absorb UV. What this says is broad spectrum, UVA, UVB. We've touched a little bit on these various wavelengths, but anybody know what UVA is? We'll start with that one. Of course, it's a slightly longer wavelength of the 2. Heck, let's start with UVB. Let's start with UVC. All right, anybody know what UVC is? Okay, we never hear about UVC. Short wavelengths, I can walk out in the sun right now, and I'm getting a big blast of UVA and UVB. I'm not going to get any UVC, at least while Al Gore is around. So why is that? We got a layer of something protective above us. Ozone layer. Okay. So UVC is very short wavelength. It's less than 290 nanometers of ultraviolet radiation. They get filtered out almost completely by the ozone layer, so we don't hear anything about it. UVB is 290 to 320, so short wavelengths. And again, this, as we mentioned, this damages DNA. UVA, as it's commonly known, is from 320 to 340 nanometers. And that is what people increasingly recognize as responsible for photoaging, which you mentioned. And it turns out it's probably responsible for many melanomas. So it's increasingly important. There's also something known as long wavelength UVA, which this covers. Some of the other ones, if it doesn't say broad spectrum, it doesn't cover it. So long wavelength is from 340 to 400. So what you want is coverage from 290 to 400. That's broad spectrum. You want to look for that label on your sunscreen bottle, because that covers both the DNA mutagenesis, the photoaging, the some of the risk for melanoma, all of those things. So here it says, help block out skin cancer. It has the American Cancer Society seal on it. So again, we've gone from preventing sunburn to preventing cancer. So let me pose this question to you guys. How much does sunscreen prevent cancer? Is it good for that?
Yeah.
You think yes? You think so, right? The dermatologists say so. Is responsible, we know, for especially for basal cell carcinomas, squamous cell carcinomas, actinic keratoses, these really, really common skin cancers that a lot of people get. So there's good evidence that using this or any sunscreen is pretty good at that. Epidemiologically, can anybody tell me about melanomas? So is anybody familiar with the data regarding melanoma and sunscreens? So it turns out it doesn't work, right? So in fact, there's some evidence to suggest that sunscreen users have a higher rate of melanoma. Whether that is that people are self-reporting use of sunscreen but aren't really using it, that they have a false sense of security and they're spending more time in the sun.
Let's take this on home now. SPF means sun protection factor. The SPF number really means the length of time you're going to be able to stay out in the sun without sunscreen, without burning, multiplied by that corresponding SPF number. So, a person who would normally start to burn in 10 minutes could theoretically have 150 minutes of sun protection with a sunscreen of an SPF of 15. Now remember that SPFs aren't always accurate. Sweating, clothing rubbing against the skin, and water sports will all wear that sunscreen off. Tests also use much more sunscreen than any of us really do. So mileage may vary, so use the shot glass technique that Joe talked about. And there's no adding on. Putting on more SPF 15 after 2.5 hours will not give you another 2.5 hours. Sorry folks, that's why we go with SPF 40 or 50. The SPF number only relates to ultraviolet B or UVB protection. UVA protection isn't measured via SPF. The UVB rays are more potent, they're quicker to produce sunburn, and have been linked to skin cancers. UVA, on the other hand, is associated with aging of the skin, and along with UVB exposure, can facilitate skin cancer. Now, this is controversial, as Joe would say, because skin cancers may actually increase because users stay out in the sun with their sunscreens longer. Some chemicals found in the newer sunscreens, like Parsol 1789, may boast an SPF number that can help block UVA rays, but we don't really know much about that. If you're not sure, go ahead. Use the sunblocks that provide a physical barrier, such as creams with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. Or stay out of the sun. Joe's going to tell us more soon at www.mmmedicine.com, so stay tuned.